Internet. It's Paul. It's Matt. We're here to talk about the exciting conclusion of Season 1 of American Gods. The season finale called Come to Jesus.
Yes.
Yes, the season is now over. Season 2 will be back. And all new fun stuff.
Sure.
Cool. Before we launch into it, your thoughts, just generally speaking, about the episode.
I liked it, but it made me think of Game of Thrones in how Game of Thrones definitely sort of mixed things up and changed things in terms of the book. And so, this is where we're seeing a lot of that, where it's like characters we didn't meet until later, we're meeting now, and situations because they're making choices now. This is the typically you wanted at the end of the season, you wanted to have be some sort of pinnacle moment, and they gave us that. So it's interesting. It's like, okay, you're telling the story differently, clearly.
Now you showed me this particularly revealing interview.
It was revealing.
It was on a podcast. Orlando Jones. It's probably not Orlando Jones' podcast. Maybe it is. I don't know. He seemed to be the host. He was co-hosting the podcast.
Yeah, I get the impression that they'd done a number of these segments.
I'm guessing Orlando's how they got those folks. Because he's like, I'm on the show. Anyway, they had most of the important people on the cast and directors were hanging out.
Entertainment Weekly, so they do content all the time. So apparently they did something.
But here were and they had Neil Gaiman on as well, which is awesome.
Yeah,
and
he's complicit.
He is complicit. So yes, everything that happened, he was like, let's do this.
Yeah.
So two interesting facts or more than two interesting facts, but two particularly interesting facts to me from this particular interview post-season, where Brian Fuller is saying, actually, we were going to have another episode, but we ran out of money.
So, my understanding of it is this. I think...
Well, at least they wanted to get to the house on the rock.
Right.
Which is kind of where all the gods come together, and it's a big reveal, and it's like, oh, the god in the book. That's where I was thinking. I was like, probably around episode 4, they'll probably get to the house on the rock, and then we'll have this big reveal. Okay,
and then you thought, oh, by the end of the season.
By the end of the season, surely.
The house on the rock. And they were thinking that too.
And then they ran out of cash. And so they're like, how do we end this effectively without getting to House on the Rock like we wanted to do?
Right.
And so that's how this episode came about, which is not really a book-centric episode.
Oh, certainly not.
And so they worked with Neil Gaiman, and they came up with a way to end the season.
Yep.
And it's an effective end of the season. It's effective, but it, maybe a little better planning gets them to House on the Rock from the first place, like they wanted to do.
The fact that they were elaborating all these characters, in a way it seems like they should go with their instincts more than they should be hearing strictly to the book.
Okay.
The fact that if you're going to make a number of these characters beefier than they were in the book, bring them in early, which means that fine, you better have a new pace for the show then.
So the other particularly interesting piece of information from this interview was that, and maybe as a result of having to kind of pad out an episode they didn't intend at the end, they decided to move the big reveal speech from Odin from episode 4, where he was originally going to pronounce himself and to Shadow and say, I'm Odin. They moved it all the way to the end of the season. And Brian Fuller said in this interview, we had it there in 4, and we just realized we were going to suck all the energy out. If Shadow knew who Odin was, I'm like, I disagree with this choice. I'll just say that. Because, first of all, a couple episodes ago when the new gods are trying to tempt Mr. Wednesday, they do so by offering him Odin rockets. And it's like a big video, and you see Odin, and they're like, this is you on a rocket. You could have that.
Right. That's an example of a reveal that was made while Shadow was in the room.
Yep.
That we didn't have in the original book.
Exactly. So not only, obviously,
right?
As readers, we all, even in the book, before Shadow knew that Odin was Odin, we the readers could figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Odin.
Yeah.
So when the reveal came, it wasn't that big a deal necessarily to us, the reader, because we're like, yeah, it was Odin. So in the context of this, again, all the viewers, by the point episode 8 comes around, with maybe a few exceptions, most of your viewers, even if they hadn't read the book, are going to know that's Odin. So when he does this, I am Odin, like, yeah, we knew that like hours ago. Now, your point being that Shadow is unknowing. I'm pointing to the fact that there was this Odin rocket thing that he was right there while they were tempting him, and basically what they did is instead of letting him know in episode 4, it was in their minds they were saying he was then going to be too knowledgeable. They made him stupid. Like he comes off as dumb.
Okay, so you're thinking that in the original book, perhaps he didn't have as much evidence to make that choice.
Correct.
And I'm saying that I think that you really wanted them to change the story then.
I just figured,
because
I was getting annoyed. I was getting annoyed with watching Shadow alternately be knowledgeable about things and then not knowledgeable about things. I'd rather them pick a way. Either he's aware of the whole story or he's completely out of it.
Right.
And is treating things like I'm in a dream or there's a scientific reason for what's happening. Like because he just selectively chooses to believe certain things and not others. And it's just like, I don't buy this guy. Yeah. And so that was why I was
that's a challenge, I think, for adapting this book because I think there's an argument to be made that in the book, Shadow should have known much earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much stuff that was going on.
Just the guy's name, Mr. Wednesday.
Like, no, I don't believe. He's what he was saying so much. It's like, really, you don't believe? And that was an interesting thing in the show, actually, that I thought it was like, okay, maybe you don't have to believe, but you can, like, what are your senses telling you?
Right, so that's a point where he talks to Jesus, who tells him, hey, what are your senses?
Which we don't even get in the book, right? It's only afterwards that they introduce the character of Jesus in some other kind of story or whatever.
Right, because I'm going to guess maybe that Neil Gaiman was trying to stay away from Christianity because that is...
I've seen, he kind of was saying that in a way.
Because they bring in... He's trying to bring, foreign... other religions in and saying how they are trying to adapt, but it's a worthy topic.
And I think if I remember the interview that I saw, one of his arguments sort of is like he's fine, Jesus. There are enough people that believe in him, and in terms of what they're doing in the show, where it's like which they did establish in terms of Odin as well, and that there are different Odin spoiler. For the book, they did establish the different Odins. There certainly should be different Jesuses.
There should be.
So...
And actually, that was funny. It took me a second in this Easter party to realize that they're all Jesuses. Like, it was about, a few minutes in where I'm like, oh, I get it. So, she's invited all of the different incarnations of Jesus to show up at her Easter party.
Right.
Which I thought was a fun touch.
Yes.
And they did them all up.
Yes.
You had the little baby, and you had... Anyway, so you had the Halo Jesus.
Virgin Mary, right.
Halo Jesus, that actor looks familiar. I've seen him maybe in Lost.
So the one who was like, oh, I'm so sorry that we're messing you up there, Easter. That they call Jesus Prime. And yes, he was in Lost.
Yeah.
He was also in...
Solaris. I don't know, whatever.
Jeffrey...
Movie cut.
Actor's name is...
Davies?
Jeffrey Davies.
Yeah.
He was also in Spanking the Monkey.
Ah, good.
Which,
good title.
If you are an adult and don't mind the racy material, I mean, it's not like, but it's for adults.
I gotcha. Much like this series.
Yes, exactly.
I also like that there was the Jesus with the stigmata and Easter candy going through his hands. I was like, whoa, all right then. So it's a fun metaphor in that it's basically the context is Easter found a way to stay relevant, but basically by allowing herself to be co-opted by Christianity.
Right.
So people are worshiping Jesus.
Yes. And she gets
on the stage, but she gets like notoriety. She gets notoriety without getting worship.
She's the reason why people continue to bring in pagan practices
Right, like
You know,
the
'cause
Easter
it's
Bunny
like
and the
that,
eggs.
that I don't think was in the Bible. I mean, I'm an atheist, but I don't think
I
the
don't.
Easter
No,
Bunny
the Easter Bunny
was
at the crucifixion.
Oh, okay.
And then he saved Jesus, and then they hopped away together. Yeah,
right.
and yet Jesus hid some eggs as like clues to where he was, and that's where the apostles followed the egg clues. As far as I know. Okay, no, all right. But yeah, right. And the same thing they even mentioned. Oh, and that's also how Saint Nick stayed relevant.
Right.
And it's obviously Christmas is obviously a pagan holiday. It's been co-opted by Christianity. I mean, the Christmas tree and all that stuff is all is pagan stuff. Right. So yeah, it's a show about the adaptation of religion.
Right.
It's definitely a worthy topic to say. Yeah, Christianity went and co-opted the standing religions or the standing holidays of these particular religions to, hey, all right, fine, you got that religion. Well, here's a reason for it.
Right.
And so it's an awesome idea. I give them massive points for that. Well done, Brian Fuller and Michael Green.
Right, but so in doing this story, I feel like partly because I think reading a story, you're not seeing your imagination is as rich as yours is. So maybe you don't imagine something as vast and impressive where you're like, okay, you know what? This is probably really impossible or not. So, in terms of how, I mean, it made me start thinking about ways that they could have.
They being the showrunners.
The showrunners. Okay. How the showrunners could have maintained his Shadow's ignorance. But it's just so difficult to do.
Yeah,
it's just difficult to do.
I hear you.
I mean, one of the things I thought of is, okay, you might want to have Shadow retelling literally some of the activities that we saw, where he was saying, I think this happened, or he wouldn't be certain of it. And so there we could see the events, but through his eyes, where things happened that he didn't understand and therefore didn't process. And I think a strong argument could be made for him to be that way, and sort of like Odin, what we learned in this, more deliberately destroyed his life so that he would be willing to go on this quest with Odin. Destroyed Shadow's life. I think that if you're going to say, okay, he really did destroy his life, then yeah, he's not present at all. He's still grieving and not present and not accepting all these crazy things that are happening around him, but he's sort of like, let me get through this.
I think a way you could have necessarily you could have prolonged the ignorance phase would have been if the gods themselves were a little hid their powers more. Like superheroes with a fake identity. Like they're so out in the open about it. They just show up and like, oh yeah, by the way, change the weather. Oh, I'll just blow things up. Like they don't hide their abilities at all.
That would be a way. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the book, hey, close your eyes and you'll make snow. Yeah, maybe that's not so convincing.
So anyway, that's just one way.
But I feel like when he was kidnapped, in the book even, it was sort of like weird. Where,
I hear you.
Maybe in terms of how he got kidnapped.
It's kind of like the horror movie thing, the problem of some horror movies where in order to keep the plot moving, the hero has to be stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go down to that empty basement. Right. Okay. Right. Let's separate. I get to make the plot work. They got to do this thing. And so it kind of feels that way where it's like, well, we needed to get to this point. We needed this. We'll just make him stupid. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. But you're right. It is a trick built into the story itself. So it's a tightrope to walk, and it's just particularly more visceral, seeing it happen as opposed to just reading it, and you can kind of fill in some gaps.
Yeah,
you're seeing the gaps filled in. For you,
and obviously it's a visual medium, so they're going to town on the things that are being seen. It does strain credibility perhaps more. I shouldn't say perhaps more. I agree that it was frustrating to seeing him sort of going back and forth.
It is interesting now they've gotten to this point where he said, "I believe,"
Right.
and then immediately Laura shows up, and we know Laura now knows
Yes.
that
Right.
Wednesday had her killed.
Right.
And so the guy that he's just kind of pledged himself to is like...
Not only does she know that, but she knows, too, that if anybody can help her, because apparently no one else can help her survive except Odin.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be interesting if she's going to, reveal...
Will she tell Shadow?
Right.
And you think she would. But
It
she
seems
might
like
have reasons not to. But.
It's her reason. She said, I want to talk to my husband.
Yeah.
So,
she'll say, Odin had me killed in order to get you.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. And I think that'll be another conflict then with
Right.
a reason why Shadow isn't...
Yeah, I mean, one of the
100%.
things that I imagine her doing, rather than sort of assessing what's going on with him in the moment and then deciding to make a deal with Odin, is what I can imagine.
Oh, okay.
Especially since what we know is that in the story later on, she saves him some more.
Yeah.
So, he, as far as we know in terms of the story, it's possible that Easter is the one that tripped them up.
I think Easter's the one.
You were thinking in terms of why would you be a bunny and jump in there, and really she has control of bunnies. So I don't think she had a problem with sending a bunny to get crushed.
She wouldn't have that wasn't necessarily as much my problem as just that a bunny would cause a car to flip over.
Right.
That just the act of dodging missing a bunny would make a car go.
Well, on this episode, we saw them just roll over bunnies, which was
right.
great.
Yeah, he just totally takes out the rabbits, which was kind of fun. So Laura, this whole thing about going to Kentucky was Mad Sweeney was taking Laura to meet Easter,
right,
in order to have Easter resurrect her,
right. So Easter says she can't do that, and only the person apparently. Or at least because another god did it.
Another god did, that's right. She kind of does a reading.
And she's, it was interesting, Laura saying that Sweeney's not a god. I guess he's not a much of a god as Odin.
He's like a demigod, a quasi thing, yeah.
I don't know, I think he's just a weak god. I mean, I feel like her saying he's not a god, maybe not a god like Odin is. And Odin is very powerful, but it seems like he uses his power, or that's one of the things in the book where you don't really know how much power he has.
He strikes down the faceless men.
The con man. Yeah, here he strikes those faceless men down, whoever the heck they were. So anyway, so she might say, hey, I'll look out for him and I won't queer your deal if you help me out. Because somebody, as far as we know, no one else is looking out for him really, in the way that we know in the story anyway.
Nobody's looking out for
Shadow.
Shadow, okay.
The way that she is, and
right.
We haven't seen anybody come up with the type of power that we see her have either.
Right, she's uber strong now. The time is taking its toll, though.
Yes,
she's
right, exactly.
Coughing up maggots.
So he would have to help her
if
he can help her in a way, and it doesn't look like she's really can go much further.
Right.
So
she's kind of on a short.
If she's going to
clock.
continue on with the story, and I don't see them changing the story that much. She continues on pretty much throughout the whole story until the point for him where he really Shadow really has a change.
Yeah,
she's up till there, I'd say, and I'm not sure how much further. But I think that they really want to have her be, and I think they should have her be throughout the series at least as much as possible.
Right. They've introduced her now. They've set this up. Why not? Keep her around?
Yeah, right. And so then I think she needs to be made more whole than she is currently.
Right, right. Otherwise, she'd just be like a skeleton eventually, and like CGI thing. But yeah, they're gonna.
Well, and it's like I used to love you, skeleton,
Skeletor.
Yes.
So.
And she's supposed to, she, I think some seduction is coming up later on. She's not very seductive right now.
Now, speaking of seduction, we might as well bring in Bilquis comes back.
Right.
So it's kind of how we've seen different thematic things for particular episodes. Like the Vulcan episode was about guns and gun violence.
Yes.
And so this one was about women's empowerment in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah.
Queens. We start with Orlando Jones as Mr. Nancy, who is a storytelling god. Right. It makes sense that he would tell a story. He's having his spiders sew suits, Easter suits,
Yes.
for Shadow and Odin.
Yes.
And so he tells the story of Bilquis.
Yes.
So we learn this much. Again, this is not in the book. This is a much more in-depth look at Bilquis. Obviously, they're going to be using her as a character, a fairly important character in season 2.
Yeah.
So
Clearly, what happens in her story, it says it should be. And even in the book, she has more to do.
she does have more to do, yes. But I think she'll have much more to do,
Yeah.
methinks. We see her back as the Babylonian goddess that we kind of had reference to her when she's in the museum, like episode 3 or something.
Yes.
She sees her old life.
Yes.
And now we see it in detail.
Yes.
And, basically a big orgy scene.
Yes.
And then at the end of the orgy, everyone is subsumed.
Yes.
Turned into goo.
Yes.
Yeah, into the, as they put it, the vagina nebula.
Yes, the good old days.
The good old days.
Because
right.
she didn't come to America until much later.
Much later, which is interesting, too. It's like, she's got on a plane. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it wasn't until the 70s.
Right, so I'm just thinking, I was like, gods can just get on planes, and it just makes it a lot easier. But then she also she takes a victim on the plane, and maybe that was part of the idea of, coming to America. But,
Well, it's interesting, all right, because, the ones that we've been seeing haven't been coming this late. They've been coming in earlier.
Right,
They've
right.
had a longer history here in the United States to sort of make their way. So what we know about her is that she was very late coming, and therefore, once she got here, didn't really have much success.
So, an interesting... So we see her... it flashes from the Babylonian times to 1970s Iran, which is when the big Islamic Revolution took place.
Oh, yes.
And so that's when, women should be pushed down.
Oh, yes.
And so that was I think that was emblematic of that thing. So it was like,
right.
and men always show up to take down empowered women was kind of the thing.
Yep.
So at 79, she then flees the country to the U.S.
Yes.
And now this was the interesting part. I was a little confused on this. There's the scene when she's in the U.S. And they're still like, but men were still, keeping her down. She is standing in a hospital room. There's a woman that has AIDS that is in a hospital bed.
Yes.
Is that the same woman that she was dancing with in Iran in 1979?
I don't know.
It kind of looked like her, and I think that same woman was on the plane coming. So I'm just wondering if maybe this woman that I don't know for a fact.
Right.
But you can put it in the comments if you saw this. But it looked like what I got out of it was 79. She meets this woman in this dance club. The revolution happens. She flees with this woman, who then maybe becomes like her consort for a while, but then gets AIDS and is dying. And obviously, it's a sexually transmitted disease, so it's kind of somewhat like an anathema to Bilquis. I don't know. It was weird. What is this? What is that person's? The person in the hospital beds. What was her importance to Bilquis?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. If it's that woman, we didn't see them come over on the plane together. So,
but if you look at that shot, because I just actually went back and rewatched it.
Yeah.
While they're not sitting together,
there
is a shot that lingers on a woman who looks a heck of a lot like her sitting farther up in the plane.
Interesting.
So I don't.
So yeah, it'd be nice if we got more information because that was confusing.
Yeah.
But
you're right. She is not a successful goddess for a long time.
No.
Until she's like homeless.
Yeah.
And,
that's when Technical Boy comes along.
And, Technical Boy says, hey, by the way, there's a Tinder or whatever.
Yes.
Yes. And so she starts using dating apps. And as we saw, there was reference to this back when we first met her, right? When she was using an app back when we first started. So
yeah. Well, the first time we saw her, she was not as she became by the time we saw her, at her height now. Not when she went way back in the past, when she was, taking in many people.
Yeah.
Or as pretty much the current events there, now she's had time to really, get back her power through many men individually. And apparently that's made her popular. So yeah, she started off with the first character that we saw. She looked like she was a little older, and now she's looking pretty young and pretty vibrant and vital.
Right, you think that so they've deliberately kind of made her more vibrant as she is becoming more popular or whatever,
Yeah.
And then there's a very, what I think is prophetic for season 2. Technical Boy makes this deal with her, right?
Yes.
So he's basically saying, I think he didn't say it per se, but he says basically, I want you to go seduce Shadow Moon.
Yeah, that does seem like she's supposed to be like a weapon that they want to direct her towards. And there's no one else we can... We know that Wednesday's too smart, and he probably knows her.
He probably knows it, right.
So, he is the one who was saying in terms of, hey, the people that you got to watch out for, and I don't think he's been involved with Easter in that way either. So
I think that's a plot point for season 2 will be the danger of Bilquis, who is now working a secret agent. I don't know if she's a secret agent, whatever. She probably doesn't broadcast that she's working with the new gods.
Right.
But she'll probably try to say, hey, look, I'm an old god just like you guys.
Right.
Not really. Which obviously didn't work so well for Vulcan. So Odin, we see what Odin uses his assassination of Vulcan as a way to anger Easter.
Yes.
So he says, look, the new gods...
To make them more suspicious of these new gods than she was originally.
I came to him, an old friend. He made me this sword. We were buddies. And then they saw what happened, and the new gods came and killed him.
Right.
And Shadow stays silent during that.
Yeah, he certainly observes it. And, now we had to start asking himself, why is he being complicit? Why does he not care? I mean, I feel like it's more explicit in the books where they make him a deal and he's like, I don't like these guys as much. And so...
Like he sees the greater good, perhaps, in like picking this side versus that side.
Right. So I don't feel he's had that temptation yet. But, so I think that's one of the things to think about in terms of Bilquis as well, is, is her heart in it?
Right.
It's like... It's
how beholden is she to the new guys?
Right, I mean, because I think, the only one we've seen who has happily gone into the New World is the one they killed.
It's the one they killed.
So we haven't met Saint Nick, you know?
Right.
Saint Nick should be happy.
Yeah, that would be a total character we should meet.
I think Easter has gotten as good as it... What is her actual god's name? Ostara. As good, and probably as good a deal as she's going to get.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
and so that's... So, we... Building on the idea of empowered women... we see Bilquis is out there. Although, okay, tell me this then. That we learned that whole thing through Orlando Jones, Mr. Nancy telling the story.
Correct.
Do we infer that Mr. Nancy also told that part of the story to Odin to say, by the way, she's working for the other side? I don't know. Because Odin, his next response is, well, I guess we need a queen too, or something like that. We got to get our own queen.
Right.
Meaning he's going to go get Easter. But I don't know. So maybe they already know. Maybe Nancy was telling them, by the way, Bilquis succumbed to the new gods. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. It's not.
It didn't occur to me for a second, but now as I'm talking it through,
it's interesting. Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard to tell that story. Without saying that's her new queen, right? I mean, because unless that's what he's saying, like, okay, you don't have anybody anymore, you don't have any worshippers anymore, but
so theoretically, Shadow would be in the know, maybe. If she shows up trying to seduce him,
if he knows
he'd be like,
that's Bilquis,
right.
Someone would need to tell him that that's Bilquis.
Yeah.
And also, too, it's clear that Odin understands what Nancy is telling him, but from that story, why would Shadow know?
That's true. So anyway, just a thought though, like, maybe actually that was a word of warning, is what that was all about.
Perhaps
because he asked for the moral of the story,
right?
And it seems like the moral of the story for Mr. Nancy keeps going back to anger gets shit done, because that's his moral of the story. When he's talking in the slave ship as well.
True.
So he's anger motivates people.
Yeah.
And so he brings that back around.
Yeah.
So there's the new empowered person that we meet is Easter, Kristen Chenoweth. She does an excellent job. As effervescent.
Yeah.
Beautiful, even when she's kind of raining destruction on things.
Yeah, it was nice seeing. I think she has a confidence in this role. as you would if you were a god, that I haven't seen in her having in other roles. Just basically, I think, hey, I'm a god, so of course I'm gonna know what my powers are. So it's just appropriate part of that character. But typically she does a lot of very happy, sunny, which this has a happy, sunny.
This does
side,
have happy, sunny for sure.
But she's somebody who
And she talks to rabbits.
Yes, she talks to rabbits. Yeah, but she's a very powerful person, and that shows.
Also, the rabbits are always giving her bad news. I think every time she listens to a rabbit, she's like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
She's never like, "Oh, thanks, buddy." But then we also have obviously Laura Moon as the empowered female character, yes. And then we have Gillian Anderson reappears.
Yes, as Medium.
And
Mr. World too.
I did not get who she necessarily was. I read something that said that maybe she was a version of Judy Garland in Easter Parade.
Well, she did have the people, in the
the
tap
dancing. Yeah. I just didn't get that. I'm not that familiar with Easter Parade, but anyway, she looked awesome, and she.
Yeah, I feel like in Easter Parade, she did have that weird hair color.
Okay. So media makes an offer to Easter, reminding her that they can give her.
Presumably, I think it's more like she's already had this.
Yeah, keep the status quo. Well, we've already given you stuff through Christianity. Hey, choose your side. Right. But at this point, Easter has been kind of conned basically by Odin. She believes the fact that the new gods killed off Vulcan. I don't trust you guys.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's partially conned too. Like you can have what you had before.
So she rejects media's offer. In the end, and in a very big way.
Well, I feel like what happened was they were saying was Wednesday here, and she was saying no, Wednesday's not here, and then Wednesday reveals that he was there.
Yeah, hi.
And that's when they have a confrontation where they're basically talking about whether or not which side Easter is going to be on, and
both sides trying to get the queen.
Right, and so I think that's when Odin reveals who he is. Kills those sort of helpers or whatever.
Right. It seems like they're vehicles for Technical Boy and Mr. World to show up in, right? They can they're like little robots that they can jump into, inherit their consciousness or jump out.
Yeah. And then Easter does her thing. So he sort of says, you can do your thing too, and that I think is what kills Mr. World and presumably.
Well, I don't know if he's dead. It kills the vehicle.
It kills the vehicle that he's in. Yes, of course.
And also,
and that's when this means war.
This means war. So, how much devastation does she wreak? Like, how far-reaching is her?
Yeah, it seems like to really travel. And then
it's like the whole. Is it all the United States is now in a dust bowl? I mean, I don't.
Or is it the other way that happened? Now I'm confused. I need to watch it again. Right, because he
strikes them down.
Right, he strikes them down, and that's when they say it's war, right? Because before that, because Odin makes the thing. Now they can pray to get
exactly. That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah. Was his plea to Easter was, you want to get people praying to you again, not just Easter is this fun thing with bunnies. You wanted to get them actually worshiping you. You need to take something away from them,
right,
and then make them pray to get it back.
Right, and certainly, I didn't even think about this until now, but, droughts are something that happen, and obviously...
well, I said the Dust Bowl I was bringing, because that was the Great Depression.
Right, but she was having devastation go pretty far, and, we're having a lot of devastation with farms and stuff, so obviously, they could, in theory, if she really had the power to do it,
many cultures have worshipped deities because of lack of crops.
Right.
I can think of the Aztecs come to mind right off the bat.
Right.
So she's done something, and I don't know if that's just Kentucky, if that's just that county,
right?
If suddenly crops in California are gone, but that's also a big change from the book. It could be that the whole nation is now under some kind of food shortage.
Right.
Maybe.
I mean, that would surprise me.
That would surprise me too.
I don't think it's
all the trees are dead.
I don't think it's necessary to accomplish what she needed to accomplish. It looked like it was far, but didn't look like it was nationwide.
I mean, I'll just put it this way: if a random county in rural Kentucky has some trees die, I don't think it's going to make people go and start praying to Easter.
Probably not, no.
So it's got to be bigger.
Well, she would have to do that in order to be that way, right? But she then may not be setting up the whole, let's do the plan.
Right.
More like,
she's doing
look
an,
at what you
an
can
example
do.
of her power.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there was that. We had Matt Sweeney, again, he's the tag along with Laura and gets held up by his crotch as a form of torture.
Yes.
He's a fun character though. I do like
him
when he's
very
around.
Good. Yes, it's very good.
And you could see again that you get the feeling he's basically been where Shadow Moon's been. When he talks about Odin had me orchestrate your death because he Shadow as his man. And the way he says it, I got the feeling he was kind of in some ways saying, yeah, that's kind of how I got roped into. He needed me as his man.
Could be.
And that's where so he's been down the same road that Shadow's been down.
Could be.
So he sees a little bit of a kindred spirit, maybe, in Shadow.
Could be. I mean, it's always funny. Like, even the book, I think. But this show takes the same course with this whole, Shadow, you're that person. Why is everybody afraid of you? It's like, why is everybody afraid of Shadow? What the heck has he done?
I did like this little bit, a little callback they did in the show, in this episode. Bilquis on the plane, 1979.
Yes.
She basically has sex and kills a guy in the bathroom.
Yes.
And you see the little occupied, vacant thing.
Yes.
Goes, occupied.
Yeah.
Vacant. Later in the episode, when they're talking to her, she's like, I've been occupied. But it was like she actually mentioned the word occupied.
Oh.
It was just funny when she said it. I thought,
funny.
Oh, you're calling back to, I don't know. Anyway, just an odd little, threw it in there. It was intentional, one would say.
I thought you were going to say the callback, obviously, of, hey, where's the bathroom?
Yeah.
On the bus.
Right. Which is definitely a callback to, That's her go-to.
That's right.
That's her.
That's it. No,
show me where the bathroom is.
That line is a great line.
Well, yeah. So, thoughts on season 2? I guess as we've hit end of season 1. What do you? Well, obviously, House on the Rock seems to be, if not the first episode, maybe the second episode, somewhere in there.
Well, the interesting thing about House of the Rock is that it was a confusing chapter for me in the book.
It was, and I'll say this, in the book too, it actually made me want to go see House on the Rock. That was, of all the things that they described in the book, the House on the Rock description, which is an actual place, it's in Wisconsin, it's a tourist, you totally go and buy a ticket and walk around. It seemed really interesting and really creepy at the same time, and the book spends a fair amount of time describing the rooms. As you're walking through the rooms, and there's like a room full of 5,000 Kewpie dolls or whatever it is. Like it's a giant carousel room, and anyway, the actual architecture of the place itself. It is this house on the rock, and it's built at this really crazy angle, and it's like glass, and so it's an actual place. Obviously, Neil Gaiman must have gone to it and thought, this would make a really cool spot for gods to meet. Let's do this.
Yeah, apparently,
I assume they're going to film
there's a place that's really inspired the part with the tree that's coming up that we've kind of seen in dreams. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't said where that is so that the people who are there won't be bothered.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't want to have tourism go and trample over stuff. But anyway, so the House on the Rock will be a thing. One would think that it'll just go and film there as opposed to recreating it, but maybe they'll try to recreate it on a soundstage or something. But and we're gonna see. We've got most of the major player gods, I guess, that will be interacting at this point. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have,
even though some of them have really small.
We're gonna somewhere in the middle of season 2, I would think, we're going to have Shadow interacting with Mr. Ibis and Mr. Jekyll. Yeah. And that'll be a subplot that kind of lingers for a little while.
There's a town plot, too. You think that's coming third season?
I would say, I know.
I
would say second.
5 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is like
I would say
more
second
like
season, but you're right.
2/3 into the book, I feel like. That
might be farther along.
right? Because it's there when the serious thing happens to Odin. So
yeah, you're right.
It's at least
it's
halfway.
probably not a season 2 thing.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right. Okay, so never mind. X that out. But so exciting. It was enjoyable. I look forward to season 2. It was different than I expected. I'll say that.
Yes.
You know, in some ways I had some gripes, but overall, I feel like the changes that were made were changes made by people who cared about the source material and were trying to enhance it, as opposed to just whatever. Let's throw in a laser or whatever. You know, like it was like, no, Easter would be affected by the Christianity, and let's bring in the all these Jesuses, and it'll be really cool. I mean, that's a fun idea, and so
yeah, you can see the spirit of the the people who were adapting it. They were like, ooh,
let's bring in Mr. Nancy's a storyteller guy.
Yes.
Let's have him tell some of these Coming to America stories.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yay for that,
Yeah.
and we look forward to more in the upcoming days. So what's coming up next for us? In a month we've got Game of Thrones coming up. Exciting season of that. In the near term, we're gonna find some fun stuff to talk about.
Sure,
but tune in next week as we discover something cool and bring it to you. So, until then, bye, everybody.